So, you're thinking about joining your kids in Australia for good? That's fantastic. You've probably come across the Contributory Parent Visa, the Subclass 143. Now, it's a very popular option, but let's be honest, the eligibility rules can be a bit of a maze. So in this explainer, we're going to break it all down for you step by step and make everything super clear.
I mean, that dream of finally permanently reuniting with your children in Australia, that's a powerful thing. And this visa, it's the key that can unlock that door. But, and this is a big but, it all hinges on ticking some very, very specific boxes. So let's make sure you're on the absolute right path from the very beginning.
Okay, so here's our game plan. We've got 4 main parts. First up, we'll talk about what this permanent path to Australia really means. Then, we're going to tackle the 2 biggest family hurdles, sponsorship and something called the family test. After that, we'll get into the support, health, and character checks. And we'll wrap it all up with the final commitments you need to make. Sound good? Let's jump in.
All right, Section 1, a permanent path to Australia. Let's get right to the heart of what this visa is actually for, and just as important, a key restriction you absolutely have to know about right away.
So the most important word on this slide is permanent. We are not talking about a long holiday here. This is the real deal. This is your pathway to moving to Australia for good so you can be with your child who is already settled there. It's all about building that permanent future with your family.
Okay, and straight out of the gate, there's a huge roadblock you need to be aware of. This is so important. If you currently hold, or if you've even just applied for, the Sponsored Parent Temporary Visa, that's the Subclass 870, then you cannot apply for this permanent visa. It is a hard and fast rule, no exceptions. You need to be crystal clear on this before you go any further.
Okay, moving on to Section 2. This is all about sponsorship and the family test. You can think of these as the 2 big family-related hurdles that you've got to clear.
So, the first gate you have to pass is getting a sponsor. Most of the time, this is going to be your eligible child who's living in Australia. But here's the kicker, it's not enough for them to just say they'll sponsor you. The sponsorship itself has to be formally approved by the Australian government. That approval is absolutely key.
But there is a major exception to this rule. If you're on what's called the retiree pathway, and this is a very specific situation for people who held a certain retirement visa back in 2018, then you actually don't need a sponsor at all. It's a niche pathway, but for those it applies to, it's a total game changer.
All right, on to the second gate, and honestly, this is the one that can trip people up. It's called the Balance of Family Test. So what on earth does that mean? Well, basically, the government wants to see that your family's center of gravity, so to speak, is genuinely shifting to Australia. Your ties there need to be stronger than anywhere else.
So how do you actually pass it? Well, there are 2 ways. The first is straightforward. At least half of your kids, and that includes stepkids, are living permanently in Australia. Or there's a second option. You pass if you have more children living in Australia than in any other single country. For example, say you have 3 children, 1 in Australia, 1 in the UK, and 1 in the US. You pass because you have more children in Australia than in any other one country.
And would you look at that? Here's that exception again. Just like with the sponsorship requirement, if you're on that specific retiree pathway, you are completely exempt from the balance of family test. You can see the pattern here, right? It's a huge benefit for those applicants.
Great. So once you've cleared those family hurdles, the focus shifts over to you. Section 3 is all about showing you're ready to join the Australian community. We're talking financial support, health, and of course, character.
Gate number 3 is what's called an assurance of support. The easiest way to think of this is as a financial guarantee. Someone, known as your assurer, makes a formal commitment to the government that you'll be financially supported and won't need to claim Social Security benefits for a period of time after you arrive.
And for the last time, we see this powerful exception. The assurance of support is the 3rd major requirement that gets waived for applicants on that retiree pathway. It really makes it a very distinct and different process if you qualify.
The 4th gate is a final checklist of personal requirements. Now, these are pretty standard for most visas, but they are completely non-negotiable. You'll have to pass a medical examination to meet the health requirement. You have to satisfy the character requirement. You need to make sure you don't owe any money to the Australian government, and you can't have a history of a visa being cancelled or refused. Simple as that.
All right, we are on the home stretch now. You've passed the family tests, you've passed the personal checks. There's just one last thing you need to do to complete your eligibility journey.
This final step is signing the Australian Values Statement. If you're 18 or older, this is required. It's basically a formal way of confirming that you understand what Australia stands for and that you agree to respect its values and laws.
And at its very core, this is what you're promising. When you sign it, you're formally agreeing to respect the Australian way of life and obey Australian laws. It's a symbolic final step, but it is absolutely mandatory. So there you have it. We've walked through all the major gates to eligibility for the contributory parent visa, from sponsorship and the family test, all the way through to personal checks and that final statement of values. You know the requirements now. So the big question comes back to you. With this clear understanding of the path ahead, is this the right move for your family's future?